Hey, what's up? Tyson France with Motion Revolver here. Thanks a lot for purchasing the Election Essentials project. We'll dive right in and show you how to customize it. Once you open up the project file, you'll notice there are 3 folders here labeled 1 through 3, import media, intro animation, and supplementals. I'm not going to spend any time covering the supplementals in this particular video because I'm going to break them down into individual videos, which will help you find exactly what you need a lot easier and quicker. So the first folder here is the import media folder, and this is where you import anything that you're going to use with the project, whether it be logos, audio, images, video, whatever you're going to use in the project, import it into these folders here so that you know where to find them when you need them. So we're going to concentrate on the intro animation folder, which when you twirl that open, you'll see that there are steps 1 through 4 labeled here so you can just follow along. It's very simple. We open up step 1, and then we'll find 3 compositions inside. We'll start with number 1, global appearance, and this is where we can customize the overall look of our project. So, for example, if we don't want our background to be blue, we just click on the last layer here, which is the background gradient, and we hit the E key to show the ramp. If we have our effects control window open here, we will see the ramp effect here as well, which kind of makes it easier to edit, or you can edit it from the timeline as well, either way. But if we didn't want the blue color, we can change it to something else, like a red or pinkish purple like we have there. Can maybe lighten that up for something a little bit more patriotic maybe. So as you can see, we can make this any color we want just by changing these colors here, but I'm going to revert back to the original so that everything stays the same. Another thing that we can customize within this composition is the color of the stars. So the stars are a little bit toned down, so any color that you make them, it might be a little bit muted, but you can change this to any color you really want. As you can see, it's kind of tough to tell, but let's see if we make them black. I'm actually gonna have to change these to let's see, I think I have them all on add mode, so yeah, I'm probably gonna have to make a real quick edit here. Just bear with me. Let's see, change all these to normal. One more. All right. Okay, so once we change the color of our stars like we just did from white to black, you'll see that it's reflected throughout the project, and now we have black stars in the background instead of white. So we could even, change our background to be more of a white grayish color sort of thing like that. Kind of a cool effect, but again, we're going to revert back to the originals here. Make sure I didn't undo what I wanted to do here. So change that back to white. All right. So that's pretty much it within the global appearance composition. Just keep in mind that anything that you change in here is going to be reflected throughout the intro. If we go to number 2 here, the election title, you'll see excuse me, you'll see that there are several keyframes as the title animates in for the final scene. But if we move our playhead beyond these keyframes, we can see what it looks like in its final state. And then these 2 layers here are both customizable layers, editable text layers. And I'm using the Aldrich font, which there's a link to in the project information. So you can make this any font you want, but the Aldrich font works well. The tracking is animated, so we can play with those keyframes and change those values. And there's also a ramp effect applied to each one. If we don't want a ramp effect, we can turn it off and just use a flat text color, or you can even edit the ramp effect. For example, if you wanted this to be like a dark red 2016, we could do something like that as well. There's also an FX layer which has a bevel alpha applied, which gives the graphics underneath of it a little bit of an edge so that they don't look completely flat. If you don't want that little beveled look, you can just turn this layer off. It's very subtle. You probably won't be able to see it in the tutorial, but it is there in the final. You'll be able to see it. And then we have our box, and which surrounds the text, and we can change the color of that as well just by going to rectangle and then stroke color, and we can change that here. So if we wanted a red, for example, go to the final composition here, show you what that looks like. But we'll keep that white for now. All right, and then the third composition inside of the edit appearance is the star, and this is just a shape layer which can be edited. As far as the color goes, we can go to gradient stroke, and then right here where it says colors, if we click on edit gradient, or you see at the top here, there's also a place to edit the stroke as well. But if we click on edit gradient, we can change the color of the star to anything we want. And then if you look closely, there are little dots here which allow us to change the position of the gradient. So we can change the angle or the position of the gradient colors to whatever we want. But we'll leave that twirled open so you can easily get it. So that's it for step one. That customizes the basic look of our intro. Then we go to edit scenes, step two. And we open up scene one, and we'll see that we have a camera layer, a control layer, and then our election text, and then stars, and then our background layer. The background has a ramp effect applied, so we can play around with the way the ramp looks just by clicking and dragging the ramp endpoints. So that's one option. And then if we highlight our top two layers here, the camera and the control layer, this is where the animation occurs. So we can play with the animation by messing with these keyframes. We can change the position and the focus distance of the camera. We can also mess with the control, so we can move this over or up or down, or rotate it as well if we want, to kind of play with the final keyframing. And the animation occurs over 2.5 seconds, and that's the case for all three, the first three scenes. They're all set up pretty much the same way, scenes 1 through 3, and then scene 4 being the end tag. So if we twirl open the elements, you'll see that these are the elements that we use to fly the camera over in the intro. We have the word election, which is drawn out, and this is a live layer which can be updated as well. You can just change the text by double clicking on it. And again, this is the Aldrich font. Same thing for the year. It's just basically 2016, which reveals itself onto the screen. This is also editable, so in subsequent years you can change this to whatever you want. So say, for example, next election cycle for 2020, you can change it there as well. Then we go to scene 4, and we'll see that we have basically our title reveal, and then toward the end here, the star flies away and creates a matte which cuts out the background. I think I scrubbed a little bit too far there. We'll back it up here, but you can see the star is cutting an alpha channel into the background and flying away. If we did not want the star to fly away and we wanted more pad with our animation, all you would have to do is turn off the star matte visibility there, and then go to our, let's see, which is it? We would go to our star layer here, and we would deactivate these keyframes. So you would just highlight them and delete them, and then the star would stay in its place without moving from the background, and you would get more pad out of this. I'm actually going to make this 10 seconds long in case that's what you want to do. Then you have 10 seconds of pad to play with. So it should still be cut out. Just want to make sure. Okay, yeah, there we go. All right. And again, the background gradient position is also customizable here as well for the final scene. Make sure that looks good. Okay. Then we go to step 3, which is the insert the audio. And since this is a short intro, we have a pretty short stinger here, audio file, which is basically over by the 7 or 8 second mark. So this is pretty short intro. Of course, there's a link to it in the item description and in the project. So if you like this audio, go ahead and purchase it from audiojungle.net. And then step 4, which is where everything comes together. So basically, we just took all 4 of our scenes, and then we also have our soundtrack layer in here. But scene 1 is at the beginning, plays for 1 second, 20 frames. And then we have scene 2 and scene 3. And then finally the logo resolve, which happens just before 6 seconds, which is timed to the beat of this audio layer. And then it animates off the screen at the given time. And again, if you needed more pad out of this, all you would need to do is just extend the composition settings by hitting Command K and then making this maybe like 15 or 20 seconds long if you require more pad at the end. But pretty much, I believe that covers. I want to make sure this transitions away fully before I... Okay, yes it does. All right, so that pretty much covers the intro. I don't believe I missed anything, but if you have any questions or comments or concerns, as always, please contact me at Tyson@MotionRevolver or through our Video Hive page. Once again, thanks for purchasing the project, and good luck with your project. All right, when you're finished customizing the intro animation and you're ready to start customizing the supplementals, we'll twirl open the number 3 folder, which contains all of our supplementals. And just as a quick overview to show you how this all works, each folder contains pretty much what is described to be within. So this folder contains the 3 background animations. This folder contains all the election result screens, such as maps and candidate screens and stuff like that. And then the lower thirds, obviously, the side panels, left and right, and then the split screen options that are here. And then there are also 3 transitions that can be used to either render out with alpha channels to use within your video production, or you can use them within After Effects as well. So just as a broad overview, to customize all of the graphics within the supplementals folder, you just want to do a few things. First and foremost, we're going to customize the overall look of the background, which will be reflected throughout all of our supplemental graphics. So if we open up the Customize Background and Title folder and then open up the Global Background Composition, you'll see that we have 2 layers in here. One is our background color, which contains the ramp effect on it, and we can access that by making sure that our effects controls window is open, or just by going down to the timeline, highlighting the layer, and hitting the E key to show the ramp effect, which we can then twirl open there. And as you can see, we currently have a nice blue gradient here, but we could easily make that something like a nice dark red gradient, or even a red to blue gradient, something like this. But I sort of think that the monotone colors work best for this sort of application. And then of course we can change the color of the star. Now the star's opacity throughout the backgrounds is scaled back a bit, so the color change isn't going to be dramatic. But let's say if we wanted to change it to a dark blue, which in this case looks terrible, so why don't we give this a better example. What we'll do is we'll make the stars black, which actually doesn't look too bad on this red background. But if we went back to our red background and instead made it, say, like a soft gray color instead of red, you can kind of see you get a nicer effect here. Now we could do something a little bit more linear without much of a ramp. But so any of these changes that we make in this composition are going to be reflected throughout the entire supplemental package. So we're just going to revert back to our original. I think that was it. Okay. And then some other things that we might want to customize within this folder. There are 2 title options. These do not have the box around them. They're just the basic text title. And again, this is the Aldrich font, which is free to download. Just follow the links within the project to download the font. There's ramp effects applied to both of these. You can decide to turn those off if you just want flat colors like that. Same thing on the star. Already showed you how to customize the star graphic, but everything's in here is customizable. There's also an effects layer which applies a very slight bevel edge to it to give the text and the star a little bit of depth, which you can toggle that on and off, or you can play with the effects to increase or minimize the effect on the text edge. I have a guide layer in here which sort of shows you where the text should be sitting within the composition. Now it's not vital that you keep it on this line, but everything that's designed within the rest of these supplements, if the text isn't sitting on this line, it may overlap some of the other graphics, or it may not appear properly within the composition. So it's somewhat important that you make sure that your title text sits on this guideline right here. And if you can't see the guide, just hold down your command key and hit the colon key, and that toggles it on and off. And that's pretty much it for the title. The light version is the same thing, just with light text instead of the dark. Make sure that I reverted back. Okay. That's it for that folder. The next folder is the Customize Candidates folder, and this is equally important. Depending on how you want to set your project up, I think most election coverage is going to concentrate predominantly on the two major parties, the Democratic and the Republican Party. I also included a spot for an independent candidate. So if you want to highlight, say, the Libertarian Party or the Green Party or one of the other parties that are theoretically running for office, you can use that as a third option. So as you can see, we have a Democratic candidate headshot, Democratic candidate name, and then same thing for independent candidate headshot, independent candidate name, and Republican candidate headshot, Republican candidate name. So if we go up to here to the Democratic candidate headshot, obviously I have a placeholder image in here which will not be included with the project, but what you would do is import your image into the project, into your import media folder, and then you would drag your headshot into this comp. Now, the comp is somewhat large, 1000 by 1400. So you want to make sure that the image is somewhat high in resolution, so that it holds up to that size of a composition. And then we go to the candidate name, and again, this is in the Museo font, but you can change this font to whatever you think works. Something like Montserrat or Gotham or even Helvetica works great. And you want to type in the candidate's last name, and of course you want to keep the name within the bounds of this composition. You don't want it to extend beyond this. So this text layer is obviously customizable. Say this candidate's last name was Smith. You could change it to whatever you need. And whatever you change this last name to within the composition, that is where it will be reflected throughout the project. So anywhere the Democratic graphic shows up is where this Democratic candidate's name would show up. Each of the others, the Independent and Republicans, are set up in the exact same fashion with the headshot and the name. You could technically change the color here too if you wanted to change this to, say, black or red or blue or whatever it is you want. Just keep in mind that doing so will change the text throughout the entire project, so you might have a conflict as far as legibility on some of the graphics. So be sure to check that before you render anything out. But that's pretty much the overview of customizing the supplementals. Everything that I just covered will be reflected throughout the rest of these folders here, which we will cover in subsequent tutorials, so go check those out. All right, now that we have our supplementals customized, we'll cover specifically the backgrounds here. So there are 3 background options. So if we twirl open the backgrounds folder, there's backgrounds 1, 2, and 3. If we open up number 1, we'll see that it's a background with the somewhat smaller stars, tilted on a 3D plane that undulate. And then background 2 is somewhat more of a straight-on view of the stars, and then background 3 is another tilted view, but much more closer up for larger stars. Now, each of these backgrounds is utilized throughout the supplementals, but you can render these graphics out as self-contained files to use as backgrounds for however you please. Now, to reduce render time, I pre-rendered the star animations. However, if you wanted to customize the appearance of the stars, say for example in background 1, you don't really like the tilt of the stars, you can turn the pre-rendered layer off and then turn on the camera and the stars 1 wave layer. Now that will reactivate the live stars, but keep in mind that using this live layer here will dramatically increase the render time. So say for example we wanted to customize like the tilt, or we kind of wanted to, you know, have it skewed in a different direction, something like this. We wanted to move our stars around, you know, something like that. If we wanted to customize the angle of the stars, and this applies to all of the background comps, so you can play with this in any of them if you wish. But again, keep in mind, it is possible, but it will increase render time. But the option is there for you to be able to customize those star layers. So that pretty much covers the backgrounds. All right, on to the election results customization. Obviously, this is some of the cooler features that are contained within this project. Actually, before we dive in here, let's go over what is contained within this folder. We have an election results, 1 candidate, 2 candidates, and 3 candidates. And what that means is 1 candidate will be shown on this page, on this screen, 2 candidates will be displayed on this screen, and 3 candidates on this screen. So if you wanted to only highlight 1 candidate at a time, you could use this this 1 candidate screen right here. So I'm just going to pre-render this to show you what this animation does. And as you can see, 1 candidate pops up, and then a map is revealed, which is currently the popular vote map. Now, and then there's also the popular vote latest results. So now how do we customize this? Well, first things first, we would need to decide, is this going to be a composition for the Republican candidate, Democratic candidate, or an independent candidate? We currently have it set up for a Republican candidate, but if we wanted it to be for the Democratic candidate, all we have to do is come down here to our layers, turn the Republican candidate off, and toggle the Democratic candidate on. Now, as you can see, I do not have this positioned correctly, but I will fix that for the... I'll make sure that's correct for supplement. Bear with me here. This is the first time I'm actually going through any of this. So I just want to make sure that it's all exactly the same. Okay, so again, if we wanted to feature the Democratic candidate, we would just toggle this layer on, and the independent candidate, same thing here. Now, another optional layer is this US vote map for the popular vote. This is completely optional. I just put it in here to kind of fill the space. You can turn this off, and then you could put text in here, or a video screen, or anything you want. Or you could even just, if you just wanted to have the Republican candidate come up, you could just move it over to the middle of the screen, and there you go too. That's another option. But we'll turn all that back on. Another customization feature is the election results title. If we want to customize that, we can either go to our folder here to the election results title, or we can just double click on the comp, and we could customize the text. Obviously, you see it just kind of slides on via panel, which the speed can be customized by sliding this keyframe back and forth. But this is a live layer, any text, as you can see. So I'll revert back. So you can customize that. Let's see what else. Another thing we could do is if we don't like this background, we can try background 2 if we like that better, or background 1. So any 3 background, just toggle them on and off. But I think that pretty much covers the 1 candidate screen. If we go to the 2 candidate screens, as you can see, it's the same thing, just with 2 candidates popping up instead of just 1. Same thing with the background options. And 3 candidates, same thing as the 2 candidates, just with all 3. And I understand that you may need to create more than one of these screens. So all you need to do is highlight the layer and hit within the project window, highlight the composition and hit the Command D key, which will duplicate the composition and create a complete copy of that comp that you can now, instead of this featuring the Republican candidate, it can be the Democratic candidate. So now, as you can see, we have 2 options. So you could duplicate any of these layers as many times as you need, as many compositions as you need, to infinity. So there is no limitation on any of these supplemental graphics. Opening up the U.S. electoral vote map. Anyone familiar with the United States election process? Essentially, there's the popular vote and then there's the electoral vote, and the president is essentially decided on the electoral vote. So there's both the electoral and then the popular. The popular is based on a percentage, and the electoral on the electoral college. So everything within here is customizable, all the numbers. So let's say, this is 153 instead of 146. I believe the number needed to win presidency is 270. So, you can customize these numbers to anything you want. Another thing that's customizable, and this isn't necessarily set up as an infographic or anything like that. So it's not necessarily scientific, but let's just say, for example, the Democratic Party is winning, like, let's say 180 to, let's just say like 180 to 90. What we could do is we could go up here to this red and blue bar, and we could actually shrink the blue bar, since 90 is much less than 180, and make it appear as though the Democratic Party is overtaking the Republican Party, or vice versa. We can do the opposite and make the Republican Party, overtaking the Democratic. So that's another little customizable feature. I have it right in the middle, just so if you don't want to mess with this, it's kind of, just a design feature, not necessarily anything that's infographic or functional graphic. So that pretty much covers that. Obviously, this is all customizable text. It's the Museo font again. But you're probably wondering, how do we customize that map? Well, okay, let's go into the setup folder, and we will go into our map customization. Nope, that's not it. We'll go into our United States map. That's it. So we want to open up the United States map composition. We'll double click that. And I'm going to actually make this full screen so we can see it better. But as you can see, it's basically an interface setup with 3 different colors: Republican, Democrat, and Independent. And depending on which state you need to be any particular color, you just go over here and you click on the state icon and you change the color. So I think first things first, just so that you can customize the colors here. So for example, if you don't like this particular shade of red, we can just highlight the swatch here and change this red to like maybe a darker red, and those all should have updated and they didn't, so I need to fix this. But customizing these swatches will update the tone of all of the colors within the project. Now, to customize the states, and as you can see, there's also Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. I wanted to make sure those didn't go missed. They're also there to report voting results from. But so, for example, if we wanted to change Texas to blue, all we would do is highlight the little Texas swatch, and we take the little color picker here, and we could just hover over any of our blue swatches, whether it's one of the other states or one of our main colors here. And same thing with Tennessee. We could do any number of these, any color that we wish. So we'll revert back here. So say, for example, Wisconsin did not win the independent vote. They won the Democratic vote. You would just make that blue. Or if Colorado won the Republican vote instead of the Democratic, so on and so forth. You can change all of the state colors simply by clicking on the little icon here and hovering over one of the pre-existing colors to change that state's color. But that pretty much covers it. So anywhere this map shows up within the project is going to be reflected in the changes made in this comp. So this map customization states you could take this composition and use it anywhere within the project. You can drag it into any newly created comp to create your own animation. For example, one of the places this shows up is, obviously we already covered the electoral and the popular votes, so this map will be reflected here. Another place it shows up, just to show you, is the election results lower third, and that map is sitting down there as well. But last but not least, to customize the candidates. So if we twirl open the setup folder, which we already have open, and let's start with the Democratic candidate. So we'll open this up. As you can see, we have the headshot that we imported, and then we have the candidate's last name that we customized in the previous settings. And then we have the 49%, and then the total number of votes, and then the little D with the blue panel here. So obviously these are all customizable things. The number of votes and the percentage and the D and all that. If we didn't want the little D in the corner, we can turn that off and stuff like that. So all of these panels are fully customizable, but this is where the percentages show up for each of the candidates. So it's good to know. And I think that pretty much covers the election results customization. All right, customizing the lower thirds. We open up the lower thirds folder here, and we see there's a 1-line, 2-line, 3-line, and then the election results for the candidates. So we'll start here with our 1-line lower third, and what I'll do is I'll pre-render this so that you can see what's going on here. So the lower third animates on with the show title and then the candidate name. The candidate name is this green layer here. This is a customizable layer. All we have to do is double click here and change the candidate name. This uses the Museo Sans font. And then at the end of the comp, we'll see that it also animates off the screen. So we'll pre-render that, and there we go. It animates off the screen. Let's see if I can actually place this over an image so that you can get a better idea of what this might look like over video. Whoops. Excuse me. All right, let's see. Move this up. Okay, so we'll preview this. So as you can see, what's going on here is this is actually cutting out a hole in the image or the video instead of just animating off. And that's because what we need to do, instead of placing the image or video inside of the main lower third comp, what we want to do is we might want to duplicate that comp, name it number 1, and name it build or something like that. And then we would delete all of the things inside of it, drag our number 1, our lower third 1. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's see. Let's start that over again. Okay, so instead of placing our image or video inside of the main lower third comp, let's just say we'll just create a new comp. We'll call it lower third 1. We'll make sure that's standard video size. Okay, so this is going to be lower third 1, which includes lower third 1 line number 1. and we'll drag our image back in here so you can see it better over an image. So as you can see, it animates on, and then if we go to the end, it'll animate off without cutting a hole in the image under it because it's no longer being affected by the layers on top. So that's what it would look like over footage. But just remember that you have to create a new composition to import an image or video into the lower third. Otherwise, we'll have that issue where it cuts a hole out. So the to line is the same, just with an extra line underneath of it. And we can also customize the point at which it animates off. And all we would have to do there is highlight these top two layers. Like, say for example, instead of this playing out to almost 20 seconds, we only needed it to be on the screen for 5 seconds. We would highlight these top two layers and drag it back to 5 seconds. And then what would happen at 5 seconds, just preview that, is it would animate off at that point instead. So that's how you would change the duration of the lower third and change the animate out point. 3-line, exact same thing again, just with a third line for even more information. Animates off in the same fashion as well, so you can slide these 2 layers back for a shorter lower third duration. And then the lower third results screen. This is where, obviously, this is where we highlight. Looks like I have a little bit of an issue here with, gotta fix that. The D was just a little low there. All right. This is where we highlight the current election results for both candidates. Now, we've covered the process of customizing the map in the election results tutorial, so go ahead and customize the map inside of there using those instructions, and that will be reflected directly in this graphic here. Or you can even turn it off if you would rather not have a graphic there. You can either leave this blank or put something else here if you want. Really, this is fairly straightforward. It's not very complicated. We just click on the customizable text layers here. We can change the percentages by just highlighting. We could change this to 54 or anything we want. Obviously, the last names here are customized in our customized candidates folder, which is another tutorial. Very simple. Some other features we have going on here, really just a control layer animates our lower third on, and then it also animates it off. So if you want to change the duration, all you would have to do is, say for example, you only wanted this to be on the screen for 10 seconds, just take the position keyframes, the last 2 here, and then drag them back to the point that you want them to animate out. It's that simple. And that pretty much covers that. Just to show you how the lower thirds are built, for example, the one line, if we open up the setup folder, the one line, you can change the background. If you would rather use background 2 or background 3, you can toggle those off. Same thing with the 3 line. You can use background 2 or background 3 here as well. So you can customize that. Other elements, such as the ones featured in the candidate results lower third, there's a D here. You know, you can customize the font on that if you wish. Same thing with the Republican, and then there's a few other elements here like the edge thread, stuff you don't necessarily have to worry about customizing, but it's there if you want to play around with it. But that covers the lower thirds compositions. All right, on to side panels. If we close that, if we twirl open the side panels folder, very simple. We'll see there's a left and a right option here. If we open up the left side and preview the animation, we'll see it basically just slides on. Things that we can customize within here, we can change the background to whatever we want, 1, 2, or 3. Very simple. And then as far as adding content to the lower third, we just double click on the content box, or we go to the setup folder. We can customize those here. But as you can see, I have a guide here that if you can't see it, just hold down the command key and hit the colon button on the keyboard. And that you kind of want to stay in line with the title safe there, just so that everything lines up properly. But you want to keep all graphics on this side. You don't want it to bleed over into this no graphics section, because it will be cut off by the graphic. So also, if you wanted to create this as a self-contained side panel, we could grab our video or any image, and let's see, that's not going to work, it looks like. Nope. Okay, so what we have to do, if we want to use these graphics within After Effects and we want to use the side panel, we'll create a new comp, and we'll just call it whatever you want, side panel 1, or however you're going to use it. So brand new side panel. We'll grab our left side panel, and then our capital image here, and then you'll see it animates on top just like this. So we can have full screen video, and then the graphic animates directly right on top. And then of course, within here we can customize content however we see fit. So there we go, there's customizing that. Same thing with the right side. If I delete the left side and instead use the right side, now obviously our image is kind of backwards, but let's just flip it like that, and then it animates on to the right side. So that's the side panel, and you could put anything you want in here. Delete that new side panel comp, but you could put anything you want inside the side panel content. Like for example, if we wanted an image, we can put an image in here. So now you can see there's images that come in. So it could be video screens, it could be images, it could be graphics, it could be logos, whatever you want. It will come in with the side panel. But I think that pretty much covers the side panel graphics. Okay, on to the split screens. We'll twirl this open, and if you've already watched the side panel tutorial, the split screen works in very much the same way. You'll see there's a split screen full and a split screen windows. So the full essentially is just a bar that splits the screen right in half. And then there's a left and a right screen for that. So if we twirl open the bar or the folder here and then go to full, this is our bar that we have made, and it just has a title and then a basic bar for the background. And then we can open up split screen left. So this is the split screen full left screen. So whatever we put in here is going to be displayed on the left side of the screen. So we'll just drop an image in here. This can be video as well, but don't have any video imported at the moment, so we're just going to use images. So let's pretend this is our left side video. As you can see, that has showed up. And if we open up the right side, actually I'll use a different one so it's not the exact same building. Let's do this. Use Lincoln. All right. Now you can see we have our left side and then our right side video imported, and this plays for a duration of 20 seconds. So there is no animate on or off. This is basically just a screen used for displaying, comparing video or interviews or something of the sort. You could also turn off these layers and render this bar out as its own graphic with an alpha channel, and then you could loop it and use it as an overlay in your video production, such as Final Cut or something similar. The windows functions in the same way. Right now it's just two empty boxes, but if we go to the windows, again, we drag in some content like left and then right. And as you see, we have two windows here. We can add text, we can add a title, we can put the logo in here. These have drop shadows here, which we can turn off. Just highlight those layers, hit the E key to show the effect, and then turn off the drop shadow if we don't like the drop shadow. We can also customize the background if we would rather use a different background. But toggle back to the originals here. And but that pretty much covers the split screen graphics. Okay, last but not least, in the supplemental folder list here is the transitions, and there are 3 pre-built transitions. So we'll open up transition 1, and we'll preview this to show you what it looks like. I have a little bit of a glitch going on here with the title. Figure out what is going on here. Let's see, that would be good thing to show you is the transition background, which we have created here. And for some reason, this little panel has gotten out of place. So just fix that. Okay, now we'll go back into transition 1. And as you can see, that's how it animates onto the screen. And then if we preview the whole thing, we'll see it also animates off over the entire duration of 2.5 seconds. So can also show you with this over an alpha channel. There we go. Now, if we want to use these transitions within After Effects, we'd have to create a new comp. Video, let's just call it something like video 1 to video 2. And then what we'll do is we'll take our transition and we'll position it here in our timeline wherever we need it to appear. And I don't have any footage imported into the project right now, but what I'll do is we will import these images and pretend they're a video. So if we pretend this first image is our first video and then the transition animates on, we can cut that layer there and then go to our next video, which we will pretend is this Lincoln image. And then I will preview the animation for you. So as you'll see, video 1, transition, video 2. All right. And then since we have this comp already created, what I'll do is show you that transition 2 functions in essentially it's the same exact way, just a different style of animation. So we'll position that transition right at the midway point and animates it from the side, and then it doesn't slide off because we haven't created that yet. And this is what happens when I create tutorials before I've actually gone through the entire project. But just imagine that this will animate off the screen right at the end here. It'll work in the exact same fashion. And then transition 3 features a bunch of stars that animate onto the screen. To show you how that works, we open up this, delete transition 2. And let's see, let's find the full video point right here. So we'll preview that, and hopefully there's nothing wrong with this one. This one takes a little bit more time because there's some 3D layers and a little bit of motion blur going on here, but this shouldn't take too much longer. There will be another star that comes through, revealing the next video clip underneath. We're almost there. And again, this is 50%, so you can kind of get an idea of the render time needed. But video 1, transition, and then video 2. So it's kind of a cool effect with the stars coming on. Has that nice broadcast feel to it. But that is pretty much the transitions. As I showed you here, there's a transition build, so transition background build, I should say. So if we open up this composition and we'd rather use a different background, again, all of the background layers are here to use. That's actually kind of a cool one for the transitions. But there's this blur layer here too. We could turn that off if we'd rather not have the blur. And then again, if you don't like the box, all you have to do is replace this election title with the no blocks light. Just replace that, and then you'd want to turn that title panel off as well. So those are all options. If that's how you would like to, if that's how you'd like your transitions to look. But I think that pretty much covers the transitions and the most part, the supplementals.
Subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads from our channel.